Okay, so next up we have with us Ben Whitter. Ben Whitter is a best-selling author of employee experience. He's the CEO of the HEX Organization and the founder of the World Employee Experience Institute. He's recognized by others as one of the world's leading authorities on employee experience and a top HR influencer. Ben is a frequent advisor and a coach to the world's top companies. He helps them to develop the employee experience strategy and delivers exceptional business and human outcomes. So Ben, hi, how are you?
Hi Benny, how are you doing?
We're good. We're good. How are you?
Very good. Nice to be with you today.
Yeah, nice to have you as well. So, are you ready?
Ready.
We're going to go deep, okay? So, you talk a lot about employee experience or from your side, like a holistic employee experience. But, you know, for many people who are listening now and in the future, it might sound just like an abstract term. So why should someone really care about this term? Why?
Because I don't think there's anything else to care about, really. I think the most important part of humanity is our experiences in life, the good and the bad. So I think organizations now and in the future will be judged on how they craft and help shape positive experiences, not just in the workplace, but beyond the workplace as well. So I think this has been really interesting because I think if we're looking at the HR profession or organizational development, we've been fixated by models and trends and practices that they have been faddish and they have been focused on maybe things that are more management centric, organization centric. But the way the economy is moving now, especially through COVID-19 and other crises around the world, it's all come back to humanity, the human experience. And this is a fascinating thing that's captivated me for last 5 years researching this topic, is that employee experience is not about employees. It's about human beings. And I find that incredibly inspiring as a practitioner, as a professional, to build a solid portfolio of work that really moves the needle on performance, productivity, and business outcomes.
Wow. And do people, when you talk with people and clients and managers from top companies, do they relate to that? You know, it's about human beings, you know, because for many people, it's not just about it. You know, we're here to make money.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you make money? it's through the great designers, it's through the creatives, it's through the great product engineers, the developers, all of these people that are doing great things because they feel like they're, you know, very, very passionate about products and services. They're fully committed to a brand and whatever the brand is doing, the mission the brand is on, but also increasingly how the brand connects to society as well. So it's no longer good enough just to be a good performing company on the financials. We're now talking much more about purpose and creating sustainable, positive human businesses. And I think that's massively fascinating. An example of this, I interviewed a CEO of Australia's fastest growing bank in the last couple of years, Judo Bank. They built a $1 billion unicorn within 18 months.
Wow.
And they're doing it to break the banking system. there's no better purpose than that. They want to build something that's more, it's better for the customers, it's better for society, delivers fair outcomes, and trust is a core part of their business strategy because so much trust has been lost in banking circles and the banking industry. They want to do something radically different, and it's working for them. And they pin a lot of their hopes and aspirations on the employee experience, the way that you deliver really strong and positive relationships throughout that business. So when we're talking about employee experience, there's only one thing we can talk about. It's the business. You know, it's about driving that business forward in the best possible way and actually mitigating risks around the business from all manner of different issues. You know, how many companies end up in the newspapers because of a poor employee experience, or the way they treat suppliers, or the way they, you know, roughshod their way to business progress. I think, you know, we have higher expectations these days.
And the way you see it, you know, you're traveling the world, you work with a lot of companies worldwide from different places around the world. Do you see like a bit of a shift? Like, you know, it's starting to become more and more entering the mainstream because, you know, up until not so far, many employers would look at people as a resource. As you know, it's not just a resource, but a very disposable resource. So, you know, if you finished your job, you know, there's more people in line waiting for your role,
Yeah.
and we're just going to substitute you. So do you see like a shift in that?
Well, absolutely.
Like a critical mass, you might say, not just a shift.
Yeah, so the growth of certainly, if we're looking at one indicator, that's maybe the amount of formality that organizations introduce. So how many new roles around employee experience or experience are they introducing? So this is a massive growth area within HR functions and business functions. So having people focus specifically around the experience. So the employee experience, the digital experience for employees as well as customers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been, I mean, tremendous triple digit, if not 4-digit growth of employee experience roles in the last couple of years. So it is kind of moving on into the economy now. And organizations are starting to look at their HR functions in a different way. You know, do we have HR functions, or is it becoming something more like a human experience function? Because that's the true nature. When HR is at its very, very best, I think we're biased towards the human aspect rather than the resources aspect. And I think we need to kind of symbolize that within our businesses somewhat in the future. So I think it's a massive opportunity for HR, because CEOs are going to be looking at HR leaders now and saying, well, where's the expertise in design thinking, data science, people analytics, marketing, you know, behavioral economics, all these wonderful topics that we're all just discovering, sometimes for the first time, that we can really leverage within our organizations now. So I think it's great for HR, but I don't think the HR of today will exist in the future. I don't know, it's somewhat controversial. And,
why not? Why not? Wait, well, why not? Why it won't exist?
I don't think it can exist in its current function, simply because it's, I mean, at the superficial level, you have human resources. Mm-hmm. It's becoming increasingly unacceptable to think of people as resources. So I think that's one big thing. And I think the other thing is the substantial, so the substance within the HR function is changing dramatically. So the talent pool for HR is becoming much wider. We're attracting all those different roles and skill sets and capabilities that I've talked about. And that will change the dynamic, because these people coming in to the HR world, they won't tolerate that kind of stuff because it gets in the way of business. And if trust is your business, then we need to eliminate all that emotional baggage and the intense feelings that surround the HR profession simply because they're HR. You know, HR has been known for hiring and firing and compliance, sometimes viewed as a management lackey, sometimes even worse. But the great side of HR is the genuine people side. And it's the stuff that many professionals don't get the credit and recognition they deserve in that regard, because everyone ties everything to HR. And generally speaking, particularly outside of HR, there's a lot of mistrust and negative perceptions there. So that's what we need to challenge, I think, for the benefit of all HR professionals. We need to move more towards experience and human beings, human centricity. And that will take away all that negative stuff that's surrounded HR for a long time and actually create stronger trust-based relationships with the workforce too. But, you know, that's somewhat controversial. We're not ready for it yet, but I'm the one that's kind of holding the flag up and saying change is on the way and we need to get ready for it.
No, we are all rooting for you and for all other people here in this conference, because it's just about that, you know, changing things up and shaking the status quo, because it's not really working. But let me ask you a controversial question.
Oh, I like those.
So, you know, in many companies, it might end up in just like, you know, changing the title. So, you know, you're not a human, you're not an HR person anymore. You're a chief people officer. But you're just changing the title, and it's just like changing one title for the other, but you know the essence stays the same. And you know, when you talk and walk and meet all kinds of people and businesses and companies and leadership that, you know, sometimes talk in different language than the HR language. You know, some people say, you know, HR is talking in Word language, and the CEOs are talking in Excel language. They're talking in numbers. So how do you actually differentiate, you know, the real stuff the people who are actually committed and wanting to do that change, then people will just, cosmetically doing it as a PR trick or whatever, and just basically continuing to do the same.
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's what we tend to focus on within my organization, in that we're really after working with people that they come out with this, talk about language, they come out with this wonderful expression. And immediately when I hear this, I kind of want to bring them into our organization. And it's something like this. So when I'm interviewing people or talking or advising them, they will say this one expression consistently. And it's a pattern. And they will say this: yeah, I work in HR, but I'm not that HR. Now, it's such a brief sentence, but to capture it is to capture the essence of the problem, in that you have a lot of progressive individuals, professionals and leaders, that want to disassociate themselves from the broader HR kind of profession. Now, that's a problem, because some of these people are some of the best HR people in the world. Certainly the people I work with, maybe senior leaders, global leaders, vice presidents, they are, admittedly, they come from somewhat more commercial backgrounds, but they're indicating there's a big tension between maybe traditional and established HR, and then the progressive human-centered HR that's coming through. So this is just going to continue as we move kind of beyond into the experience economy and this more, trust-based economy and truthful economy in a world of fake news, because we have to tell the truth, and we have to live the truth within our organizations, because where people are turning to for their news and their views and their opinions, we don't trust those organizations, especially on social media. So trust is going to be the next battleground for HR. So I think actually moving forward the function profession at a substantial basis, so changing the structure, changing what people focus on, changing mindsets. This is what my organization is set up to do. And then moving them into, okay, we can now change the title of our function simply because we're walking our talk. We're developing human-centered practices. We're developing experiences that really do matter to people. And we're focused in on our primary audience, which is the workforce and everyone within it. That's when you start to see true differentiation, and not this phony, superficial, conference stealing, headline grabbing nonsense that we see a lot of the time. No offense to anyone, but
no offense at all to, Okay, but let me ask you this, because we've been interviewing and having very so-called very outstanding people, and yourself included in this event, and they're talking about a different vocabulary, and they're presenting different approaches than the mainstream that is currently going on. And you yourself, when I look at your company, you have like a model that you're working on. And there's all kinds, like interesting blocks in the model, blocks like structure and leadership and technology. But, in the center of the model, there's the truth, the truth. Mm. So I want to ask you, and I'm asking you, like sincerely asking, what is the truth? What is the truth?
I think that's humanity's greatest question. I think that's the biggest question we can ask for ourselves personally and professionally, but also for our organizations as well. Most of us, we don't find our truth in life. That's just the bottom line. We go off in one direction, and sometimes we drift, sometimes we're confused, sometimes we doubt and procrastinate. So we don't find our path, and that's a great shame within the human experience. What I define as the truth, certainly for organizations, is a combination of your purpose. Why do you exist? What's your reason for being here? What are you really focused on? What's your purpose? And your compelling mission. So what mission are you on? Because a mission you have something to achieve, but when you're on a mission. So you have the great why behind you, then you have the mission to kind of propel your business forward, but then you have the great values as well. So the values are fundamentally and critically important, unless they're just these superficial things that hang on the wall and do nothing. So we found that if you introduce purpose into your organization, if you set yourselves up and unify around a compelling mission, and if you really honor your values consistently and ruthlessly, throughout the good and the bad. And we've seen this through COVID-19 now. A lot of values have been.
What have you seen? What have you seen during the COVID-19?
So we've seen companies honoring their values, so doing what they said they would do. So if they're talking about looking after their people, caring for their people, then they're extending great employment practices to the workforce. They're making sure that they're to support people financially and emotionally through this crisis. But then at the opposite side of the spectrum, you're seeing, organizations really rushing to lay off people. Now, that's a business decision, and sometimes it's the right business decision to make. But the way you treat people through the exit experience, you can still do that in a dignified and human-centered manner. Now, employee experience organizations, the ones certainly we work with and the ones we've studied, they held their ground and really lived their values and their purpose and their mission through COVID-19, even if they were facing absolute disaster as their revenue declined as well. So they still wanted to give people a positive experience, and they still wanted to look after people into the alumni community. So it's that connection for life. So that's the truth. And you'll see it in Israel, you'll see it all around in different countries. The companies that are doing really well through COVID-19 tend to be the ones that continue to be focused on their purpose, mission, and their values. Not just talking about them, but actually going out there and doing it and trying to serve society in a powerful way as well. It's very human. We see organizations that are really, doing their best to support people during a crisis. It does stand out, and it does differentiate them from others in their industry. And as a result, we want to go and give them our money. But again, if your values are based around convenience and, if you're,
Profits.
quality and obsession with customers, and you maintain that through COVID-19, like many companies have, certainly the digital ones, then you're still following your truth. There's this myth around sometimes, the truth must be this happy thing and it's all wonderful rainbows. But in actual fact, from the research, if you want to take a hard look at it, the truth.
Yeah, we do. We do want to take a hard look at it. Yeah. We're here for the truth, no?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you take businesses that, sometimes they are focused on lower prices and convenience, and, consumers want that. They want that type of experience too. And they're willing to accept that experience if they're getting cheaper prices. That may be the truth. It might not be a pretty truth for some to stomach, but it's still the truth, and it still helps the business moving forward if they're doing other ways to enhance that as well. So I think that's essentially at the heart of the model. So it's, whatever you're promising to your consumers, whatever experiences you want to shape up for your customers, we need to bring that right into the inside so that the truth of the organization is consistent and ruthlessly upheld throughout the organization's business operations.
So can you share a bit, how this process is actually going on? You have a phone call. Don't answer it.
I'll take it.
Don't pick up the phone. Hey, say hi to Benny. Can you give some examples of how it's actually being manifested in the process itself? There's a company that really wants to do that shift, not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk and give, that meaningful work experience, employee work experience that it's true, and not just, like a poster there hanging on a wall. How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, it depends on
general, on a high level, we're not going, yeah, you got the question.
Yeah, it really depends on where the business is at and the size and the scale of the business, the maturity of the organization. So we've had, so I'll give you a couple of examples. One, say with 500 employees. So this company, they immediately hired a chief employee experience officer, and they put them on the board of the company. And then everything changed about the way that they approached their HR function. So they started co-creating at a very high level with employees as partners. So that went across workplace design, technology, the tools and equipment to do the job, even naming the rooms within the organization. They got involved in all of that as a very integrated and unified way to develop engagement within the business as well. And after, I think it was about 18 months, they were growing at 5 times. So they recruited, say 5 times that number over a period of 18 months, 2 years. And 83%, I think it was, 83% of new employees came from employee referral. So that's just one very clean metric to say, you know, it's a really powerful approach when you're starting a business, when you're trying to grow a business, because you're creating a very powerful experience. People, they want to talk about it and they want to recommend the business to other people who the business ultimately wants to attract to do good work for. So that's one kind of growing company, high growth company. For the larger companies, it could be, you know, we've seen examples and case studies from organizations with 200,000 employees, where they look to put in more systems and practices and processes to support the work of a central and maybe distributed employee experience team. So you have the global kind of meeting with the local. And that's, you know, it can be very, very powerful. You bring in technology, you start to up the ante in terms of your people analytics. So you can start to create the moments and experiences that really do mean something to people. And you can go after them as well. And fixing all the things that frustrate people. So we've had, again, another company we work with, 200,000 plus employees, and they've installed their truths into their HR operating model. So they have 13 truths, and the entire HR organization and the culture organization is there to bring to life those truths within the business in, you know, what is an ambitious journey to become the world's most trusted brand. So, yeah, I mean, you have to organize and think about how you do this. This is the thing about employee experience. It's very holistic. So you have to think about the whole as opposed to all the different constituent parts. So it's great to have, you know, experience-driven professionals, but even better to have holistic thinkers who can make connections to, you know, marketing, communications, infrastructure, you know, estates and facilities, all of these different touch points that employees will encounter. We need to go after now in a very, very strong way. Because if anything's getting in the way of the people and the business, that's what we need to get rid of, because it's not helpful.
Oh yeah, I'll stop for a second to put a question from the audience, and this one goes from Farzad from Toronto in Canada. So he's asking, I once heard at a conference, not unlike this one, that HR, they are neither human nor resources. This is not to say that their HR people are bad. I do think, however, that among employees, HR has a bad reputation for all of the reasons you stated. My question is, what is it going to take for that image to change? If we take for Lindsay's talk this morning, leadership needs to help monitoring organizational motivation and creating learning focus, system thinking organization. Can HR successfully step into this role? And what are the barriers it faces in doing so?
Yeah, so I did some work with The Economist last year, and we researched the views of C-suite executives who were commenting on the performance of their HR functions. And they came up with 6 big things that we need to take into account. But I suppose the 3 biggest ones was alignment, accountability, and transparency. So as HR functions have evolved to become more experiential and trying to kind of move forward employee experience work and, you know, deliver better experiences for people accessing HR services and within the workforce generally, accountability was huge, because all of a sudden you get all these different heads of functions in the same room talking about the employee experience. And sometimes they don't have the agenda, the mandate, or the personal relationships that are absolutely essential to take forward this collective approach. So I think that's huge. That's absolutely one major thing that's getting in the way. It's how you structure employee experience into your organization and how people work together on a regular basis, because it is very much a collaborative and co-creative based approach. You know, HR has embraced agile and different things, but I suppose employee experience is not just about working in an agile way within the HR function, it's about working well beyond the HR function. So I think that could get in the way in a very, very serious way as well. The other thing that we've picked up, certainly from the people we work with, So they come to us because all we've ever focused on commercially is employee experience. So it's kind of like we're a one-trick pony, but we believe it's the best trick in the business. So when they come to us, they come as HR professionals or internal communications or employee engagement or culture warriors or agile ninjas, whatever it might be. But then they leave as actually, we are professionals that are working to elevate the human experience at work. And I think it is a mindset shift like we haven't really seen before. I mean, Agile has done that, yes, actually data-driven, thinking in more evidence-based terms is challenging HR. But I suppose the biggest challenge for HR is a shift to human-centered thinking, through everything we do, whether it's working with data, whether it's working with suppliers and vendors, technology, experts, whoever it may be, we still need to be thinking about the human audience we have within our organizations and thinking about that in a very, very holistic way, which is, I think that's a real weakness for HR as it stands today. So those are a few things I would say that could potentially present barriers, but I think HR is very well established. It's going to take a long, long time to kind of overcome some of these barriers. And actually, I don't think the language around HR helps in any way whatsoever. Because even some of the best organizations on the planet, if you speak to their employees, they will still report low levels of trust in HR. Now that's a problem.
That's a problem.
They're creating the best experiences in the world, but HR gets none of the credit, but they still get all of the blame. And that to me is unacceptable. And it should be unacceptable to HR professionals.
No. Okay, we have two questions that's coming up. One is from Ian, so I'm going to give him the ability to ask it online. So let's see if we can do it. Ian, can you hear us? Would you like to pose your question? Hi, Ian. You're muted. So if you want to ask your question, then do that. In the meantime, I'll ask the other question, how do you even measure employee experience? And I really connect to that question because many people are asking that. It could be just another fluffy term who sounds really nice, but how do you measure love? How do you measure truth? How do you measure employee experience? Is it, can be done?
Yeah, I think it can be done. I run something called Space HEX, which is a podcast, and we had one of the global directors of data science from Uber. We had that, we had him on yesterday. And we were talking about this question in detail because our view, and certainly what I've published in my book, was about the return on experience. So whereas perhaps in the past we've been very narrow around HR outcomes and employee engagement outcomes, I think because of what I've said previously, we need to broaden that out to look at all the real business outcomes that we can get our hands on. And I suppose doing real research projects and studies to look at that over time so we can start to see the correlation between employee experience, so changing one experience into something better, and then the impact it has on individual productivity, performance and outcomes. So I think if you take one experience, whether it's onboarding, whether it's the mobility experience, whether it's the leadership experience, what can we do to improve the performance of that particular experience? And if we look at that as a baseline, and then we can look at the after picture, that gives us some solid data and stories to work with. And then again, you build that up across the organization if you're working holistically. Very, very quickly, a very, very strong story emerges that says, focusing on the experience of work really does make a massive fundamental difference. For example, if even at the candidate experience, if you're treating people really well as they come through as candidates, what does that add up to in terms of referrals, or perhaps they could be consumers of your business? Does that transform them into customers? Do they feel more associated with your brand? So there's all these great outcomes. And I suppose marketing and reputation outcomes are huge within employee experience as well, because we want to work for innovative and progressive brands. And the companies that are attracting the most applications and the most high quality applications tend to be the ones that being viewed as an experience-driven organization. So these are a few things. MIT Sloan research indicated that employee experience is delivering on productivity, profitability and innovation and customer satisfaction as key outcomes of employee experience. And
so this is what you basically, you can measure it like the byproducts that are very quantitative, and you can measure them. So this is how the employee experience comes into, you know, taking a value, like a value or a number or whatever.
Yeah, and because it's human beings, we need that qualitative piece to complement that as well with the great storytelling capabilities that our brands can offer, you know, to attract customers and consumers. A lot of the top brands that you see, they use their employee experience as a, you know, it's a catalyst to create stronger customer connections as well. So it could be that you're seeing on LinkedIn or wherever it may be, some great examples of employers really looking after their employees and delivering great experiences, and all of a sudden they go viral. Well, what we're doing, we're creating more customers and more potential talent in our pipeline just because we're sharing more about our employee experiences. So there's a lot of stuff like that that will sit outside that we're not aware of, which is just happening anyway. But again, the more we can get into that data, the more powerful the case will be for employee experience. Similarly with customer experience, how do you know that customer experience approaches are working? Well, you know, you've got a lot of repeat customers, you've got a lot of loyal customers, you've got a lot of customers that are shouting and raving from the rooftops about how great your company is. And it's the same for employees too.
Okay, great. So one last question that I'll be asking, because I think that Ian wasn't there or was just raising the hand accidentally. Finally, you know, to sum up our conversation, you know, since this being a practical event and we want to bring, you know, practical value and not just, you know, talking about these things, what are, you know, some practical tips or things that they can actually do tomorrow morning, whether it's HR or managers or any other function in the organization? What do you suggest them to do practically, tomorrow?
I love this. I love this question. Okay, here's practically what
give them something they can actually do, you know, and not don't say, you know, just change.
Okay, actually, this is something you're going to actually do when you go back to the office tomorrow. Think. That's it, because again, one of the things that we've seen with practitioners, particularly those that kind of go to workshops and conferences, is that they rush back and start to commission employee journey mapping or design thinking workshops or purpose workshops or training, or, you know, forget all that. Think about your truth as a professional, as a person. Think about how that connects to your organization, and then start to look at the organization's truth and how it connects to your HR functions and how it connects to the people and the communities that you have within your business. Think deeply about it, because there's a lot of organizations, they become really enthusiastic about employee experience, but they'll go off completely in the wrong direction. And then they'll complain about the outcomes at the end because, oh, we designed a new journey, but it didn't quite deliver what was expected, because they haven't thought about it as a holistic endeavor. So if we sit back and think just for a little bit longer than usual about where we can make the biggest impact, and then have a look at the data, then have a look at what employees are telling us, then have a look at what we can really fix immediately, that will send us off in the right direction straight away, as opposed to being distracted by all these new shiny things and technology and all these different things that are going on there. So that's why I encourage, and certainly on my program, people have a thinking marathon, which sometimes takes them by surprise. But it's so important, because how many of your viewers here understand their truth? You know, really think about it. Do you know your truth? If you don't, think about your employees and the connection to your organization's truth. You might be getting lost somewhere, and that's what we need to cure immediately.
Wow, that's a really great sentence to finish off with. Ben, it's been a pleasure, really. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for sharing your truth.
Thank you for having me.
Sharing your truth with us, and I really hope, you know, that it will ripple and you know, more and more to become a mainstream and not just like an empty slogan that many people use in a wrong way. So I really thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great day. You're welcome to stay if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great one.
Enjoy the experience. See you later.
Enjoy the experience, definitely. And we'll definitely have an experience right now, because now we're actually moving into an interactive fun break. So